Can you hear me? Babunski? Hopefully. Yep, good.
Yeah.
Yeah, we had a little bit of the same kind of problem we're having. My Skype is knocking off the camera for the OBS software, but I think I figured out how to bypass it. That's some TLG love right
That
there.
is. That is throwing the emotes. I forgot. Yeah, Chuck's got that's one of the 3 cheer emotes.
That's a cheer emote, so you get that when you're
a sub.
Very cool. Yeah, I think we both put sup on the.
Well, no, that's just surfer slang for sup.
There you go.
How you doing?
So what I'm going to do is move Photoshop over here, so when I'm talking about Aihrde, I can actually see the map in front of me as opposed to.
Oh, look at how fancy you are.
Behind me.
Yeah. So that's interesting.
All right. What did you see, Babunski? All right. So let me move. This will cause me a problem later, but and then we will open. Wind currents. The world of Aihrde's maps have wind currents on it. You people know that. If you dive into the Codex of Aihrde, I have all of the wind currents named. The major wind currents, I should say. So I am fishing right now through hosts of 20 years of files to pull up a couple of maps. So I'll have them in front of me in case anyone has any questions. And something to jostle my memory. Way too big. So I mean, this map is so huge that the original ones are, I can't remember what it is. It's so huge. Yeah, it's like 80 gigs or some craziness. I can't remember. It's a lot, as the fellow would say. So let's open that one. That gives me my continents, so everybody can see. We're gonna give it a couple minutes to see if we can get more folks in, and then we'll start talking up the world of Aihrde. And as always, we take questions as we go. If I don't catch them, Tim will in the chat room. So, chat box, what's it called?
Chat box works. Stream chat.
Stream chat. Then we'll get them and we'll answer them as I go. It's often easier for me to answer questions than it is to just kind of explain big picture things, and this map is a big picture thing. I guess I want to open this PDF. This is way too big. And then we got, of course, the giant scroll down map behind us. Oh yeah, that's the ticket right there. Okay, so Photoshop's up and running. Oh, was that you, Tim?
Yeah, I just signed in under my own Twitch because I can never usually do that when we're doing the others.
Okay, so we'll give another minute or so for people to gather and see.
Yeah, let's see. Anything?
I guess I shouldn't rub my belly on the...
Well, you can, but it's not going to look any worse than that. So.
Yeah, probably not. Let me close this door.
Yeah. Get over here, that way people can...
In case there's... Alright. We were only partially ready. We started getting ready at about 10, and that clearly wasn't enough time for me to... I can mess up a computer like nobody's business. So.
Well, eventually we'll get it all sort of straightened out where we can get everything set up. He was teaching him the difference between scenes and sources. Which is a little difficult, I think, to get, but at some point we'll get that. You want to get your shirt buttoned up. We don't want to have that kind of show. Is that what it is?
Yeah, just there's this great Seinfeld episode. If you ever watch this, I think it's actually the pilot episode where they talk about the top button of the shirt. You know what I'm talking about?
I remember that one. Yeah.
Yes, and it's very important the top button be in the right spot, or it's
too tight,
or you're. Might be wearing necklaces and dancing to Staying Alive in '76 or something.
Now see, I always wear a shirt underneath here. I know.
I don't layer.
Yeah. Well, I was always cold, but also this way I can cover up.
See,
all my parts.
All of my clothing philosophy is best captured by that. Is it Jimmy Buffett? The greatest line in Western literature to include every piece of written and sung and everything is when Jimmy Buffett says, how's it go? He goes, I blew out my flip-flop. I stepped on a pop top.
That's pretty much.
That sums up my entire clothing philosophy. That said, I will not wear flip-flops. I never wear them. It's the devil's shoe. When I was very, very young, I don't know where this was, but I must have been 7 or 8. We were at some park. I think it was in northern Arkansas, southern Missouri. We were stationed at Fort Leavenworth, Kansas, and it was a dinosaur park. It's still there. You can still see the old rusted dinosaur, because that was a couple of years back. But I got out of the car, and I was running to the park entrance in flip-flops, and my flip-flop went flying, and I stepped on a broken 7-Up bottle, and it cut me to the bone. There was blood everywhere. Well, I have not worn flip-flops since.
Always smart. Yeah, your boots won't get that much. When I was working in the yard the other day, clearing out some stuff, and I got back to the room, and I was wearing my rubber sole shoes, but I had stepped on a locust, thorn. It was that long.
Holy
it had missed my foot just coming along the side. Those things are, they're
like a nail.
Really bad. Yeah, they're horrible.
It'll run up through you.
Yeah.
It's one of those things that when I'm running games, I'll have the characters run through stuff like that.
Yeah.
Because until you hit it, it's one thing to say, I go through the thorn bush. Go through the thorn bush and then tell me you go through it.
Going through it.
That stuff will eat you alive for sure.
Yeah.
All right, so for everybody joining, I'm Stephen Chenault, and this is Tim Burns, and we're going to discuss the world of Aihrde, Troll Lord games, I suppose.
Yeah.
We're going to discuss the world of Aihrde today. We'd like to open it up to questions immediately, so if you have any, just throw a question out there. I'm going to give a quick skinny on the world of Aihrde, and we'll go over a little bit of the products that we offer. It's a lot of products that we have for the world of Aihrde. And then we'll just kind of open it up, I think, to a general discussion. So I'll start with the history of the world's development. When I started gaming back in the 70s, really world creation and stuff wasn't part of what we were doing. There was the very small Greyhawk thing that we got. I think it was I know we had the little bitty book, but the first one we really dove into was the folio edition that had, if I recall, 2 maps and 1 book. So we played in Greyhawk forever. Later I got the red box. I can't remember what that one's called, but the red boxed set of Greyhawk. And we played that forever and a day. But there was things that I wanted to do and stories that I wanted to tell. And when I run games, and we did one epic game that we began in '85 and we're still playing today. That's what we call the big game. And a lot of what you see in the world and Codex of Aihrde, you actually see. Some of it came out of the big game. A lot of it came out of the big game. So we began somewhere in the late 80s. I began to morph everything out of Greyhawk and create my own world. When I joined the Army, that proved to become a catalyst that I kind of washed. Basically, the Winter Dark for me rebuilt the entire world and allowed me to kind of just remake everything. So I started from scratch. Now, that's kind of in column A, so there's a heavy Greyhawkian influence in my world development from the beginning, but I kind of abandoned all of that. When I was in the Army, I wrote a book called, it's never been published, but it's called A Voiceless Song, and it's essentially about this, a member of the royal family of this small kingdom who's driven out and into the wilderness through a variety of reasons. I believe it was forlorn or lost love, I believe, was the catalyst that drove him into the wilderness. And he's hounded across the mountains and eventually into this deep cavern where he is seduced by these evil creatures. They abuse him and beat him and torment him and twist his mind in every which direction, or I shouldn't really say twist because he's kind of evil to begin with. It's why he was driven out. But he learns that through song he can control these creatures, and slowly he begins to kind of create all of his power around him, mastering the dark arts, for the lack of a better word. And there's a few kind of offshoots in that tale and whatnot, and then I cannot remember that character's name at this point, but that character is the genesis for Unklar. He goes on to conquer, he goes on to to use his sorcery to conquer the kingdom, and he brings in this. He freezes it all under this kind of shield of winter and dark, and that's where all that comes from. Now, when I finished the Voiceless Song, that stuff, I was, of course, in the Army, and I had a lot of time and hanging out, doing the thing, and all of that bled into the world of creation. I kind of put all the Greyhawk material behind me and created this world. There's a few vestiges of Greyhawk remain. Keeland and Kaomar actually have a pretty close relation, but this mostly comes from the novel A Voiceless Song. Now, once I got out of the Army and I moved to, where did I go? I went to Fayetteville, Arkansas. I started working on my graduate degree in history. Once I kind of really got back into history, and I've read it for a long time, it gave me an understanding of culture and language and time and all of these things, and that began to really play into this world creation. Simultaneously, we picked back up the big game and started playing it again as often as we could. Of course, we were scattered across the state, so it wasn't as easy, but we started doing the big game. So all of these things kind of led into, by the early 90s, the world of Aihrde, the one that you see in front of you. The map was redone, everything was changed, and it all kind of melded into this giant winter dark scenario. And I guess I should take a step back. What I did while I was in the Army and while I was creating A Voiceless Song, we had essentially figured once I joined the service that the big game was over. That our group, Mac had moved to Little Rock. Todd was wherever Todd was. I think he was managing the 501, and I was gone and off and in the service. We figured we were pretty much done as a gaming group. So we shut the big game down kind of officially. Once in the Army, when I was writing the novel, I got kind of fired up again. I started playing with the local group there. So I started writing letters to everyone. It was between Charlie, Mac, and Todd, and Chris. I started writing these letters to them and kind of telling them what had happened to their characters after the world's fall and after their fall. And I wrote these long stories about them. I've got them somewhere in the gray book, I think. But there's two big notebooks on Aihrde, the gray book and the red book. The red book is the older kind of Greyhawkian influence, and the gray book is everything that came after. So these stories, there was no email in those days. I wrote letters, and they all responded with letters, and we kind of rebuilt the characters, and all of that just gave me even more impetus to create the world. So when I was in graduate school, we began playing again. Of course, it was very localized, because at that point I hadn't kind of mapped the whole world out, just really the area of play that they were in, and even then that was somewhat dubious. But it wasn't detailed, not like you're seeing it is now. That all comes in years and years of playing. But so after that, you've got we picked the game back up and we start playing it, and somewhere around in '99, I guess. So we play. I get on the Army in '93, and these years are all kind of jumbled together. I get on the Army in '93, and then we're doing the big game for the next 6 years. They would come up to Fayetteville to play, or I would come down to Little Rock, and we'd meet at Mac's house and play over at his apartment. He actually rented a house on Rock Street with this rundown, when he was in law school, this rundown house. Kind of a rough place, but we'd show up and game anyways. We didn't care. A lot of good games there, and that really began the whole Titanic, what you see in front of you. As they began to play in certain areas, I began to write stories based on what they were doing, and then those stories would kind of fire me up to even write more stories, and that's where the history and the Codex really begins to kind of coalesce and come together. Of course, a lot of it's just in notes and commentary and all of this craziness everywhere. But so after that, I guess in '99 we founded the company. We were going to do 2 adventures, I believe, Mortality Green and Fantastic Adventures, and then Mac wanted me to put the setting together. No. We were going to do the 2 adventures. Then Davis joined us, and he had a 3rd adventure, and then the printer told us if we would do 4 books, I think I've told the story 1,000 times, if we would do 4 books, we'd get a discount on the covers. So Max scrambled to get us 4th cover art done, and this is, I wish I had, I think I actually do. So Max scrambled to get a cover for it because we didn't have the art done. We had the art done for 2, and then a 3rd one he was working on for something else. That would have been a vacuum. But So the fourth book, he said, why don't you just do the world of Aihrde? Take your notes and put something together. So that's what I did. I put something together. And that is this book. There's such a delay. I can't ever tell where it's hanging at.
Just trust the camera.
I will trust the camera. Work. There you go. So that's this book, and it's a short little 24-page. This is still one of my favorite pictures we've ever done. We can do that for tier 2.
Yep.
That'd be all right. So we did what is that called? The After Winter Darks, a fantasy campaign setting. That had been released in 2000, I believe. It did so well. It sold so fast, and it got so much feedback that I just started diving into the Codex of Aihrde, and that we came out with in 2001. And that's when I took everything that I had and it coalesced into a coherent narrative from beginning to end that you could sit down and read, and this is what actually happened. Its focus, however, the Codex of Aihrde, its focus was a little bit different. It was both a player's book for 5th edition and a setting book, so it had a lot of material in there that wasn't just setting oriented. So some of the material that I had for the setting we had to cut out because we had size limitations that we were working with. Now, fast forward to, I guess then we released our own folio version of Aihrde. I took a lot of the material and kind of condensed it because it can be overwhelming when you dive into the Codex of Aihrde. I mean, it's 356 pages. It's this guy here. It's 366 pages, and it's all text. I mean, there's no game content. You can play any game. Dungeon Crawl Classics, Sword and Wizardry 5th edition. It doesn't matter. Castles and States, you can and start playing in the world of Aihrde because there's no game content in that book itself, and it's close to 300 pages of material. So a lot was cut out, even though a lot was put in, we wanted to condense it to make it a little bit more digestible. And that one the folio did okay. We sold quite a few of them, but it just didn't have the shelf appeal that the hardcover did. So we began in 2010 or somewhere around there to redo the Codex of Aihrde and to cleanse it of all game material and to bring even more of my stories, notes, mythologies, and everything into the book itself. And that's what you have now. I think we released it in 2015. The Codex of Aihrde, which is the book I just showed, is divided into two things. The first section of the book is basically a history of Aihrde. I believe it's about 130 pages of just, it takes you from the Allfather's cognizant moment when he awakens upon the void, or is on the void, however you want to look at it, and creation of the River of Time, all the way down to present day, which is the year 90, I think. No, 1190 in the New Age. The second part of the book is more technical. It goes into, it gives technical descriptions of the planes and the planescapes. It gives the peoples of Aihrde and the gods of Aihrde. And then it goes over each of the main countries in the lands of Ursula, which I'll get to in just a second. And then beyond that is terrain and whatnot. And actually, let me back up real quick. So I need to get that OBS up, right? And this is something that causes a little bit. So I need to go above. Is that correct?
Yeah, you want to put it on top, or just make it active. There you go.
Okay, so, and I can move this guy.
Yeah,
like that.
Oh, you're getting
there. So what you're looking at now on the screen is the world of Aihrde. It's always torn in my mind whether it's flat or round. The world was originally flat, but when Unklar entered the world during the Winter Dark, he actually bound it into a globe and staked it at four corners. And four corners, where would that be? I can't point to that, can I? Where am I pointing?
Well, can you point to the larger map?
No, because that's actually the
Oh, that's right. Ursula,
yeah. So, interesting. Okay.
Well, you can't point to it. Right.
I can't point to that, right? No one knows what I'm pointing to.
Well, okay. I have an idea.
So if you look down at the bottom right hand, not corner, but there's two islands, large islands. One of those, the four corners is in. That's actually where the world is staked in the globe. Can I point to it? Will this do it?
No
one's they can't see it. Dang it. Almost. At any rate, so that's called the four corners, and that's where the globe is actually staked. Now, in my head, I've never really kind of laid it out that it's round. Because I've played in it for so many years that the world of Aird's flat. And it ends in the Wall of Worlds. The Wall of Worlds is what the Allfather created around the world of Aihrde to protect it. So, and I can get into that in a moment. But so what you're looking at here is the world of Aihrde, all of the continents and the seas and oceans and the whole nine yards. And if you'll look, there are two boxed areas on your feed there, one kind of higher than the other one. The lower one is what's called the Lands of Ursula. Now, the Lands of Ursula are what I call the playable areas of Aihrde. That's the stuff that's covered in the Codex. So when you look at the Lands of Ursula, there's the kingdom of Bernavitz and Cleves, there's Augsburg and Kaomar and Aenok and all of these kingdoms. That's all covered in your Codex of Aihrde. And that basically, aside from the first 120 pages of world history, the Codex of Aihrde covers only the Lands of Ursula. Now, that second box at the top is the Haunted Highlands. That's a setting created by Casey Christopherson, and it was very contained, and he and I sat down and very easily wove it into Aird's mythology and into the world itself. And what this hopefully demonstrates to everybody is how easy it is to take the world of Aihrde and adjust it to your own game. You've got a gigantic planet here that you can go pretty much anywhere, and I tried to, and set up your own setting. I tried to make it very diverse. There's people of all ethnic groups throughout the world of Aihrde, so you can kind of take any ethnicity that you want and play with it. It's all there. So all very Earth-like too, so it's very relatable. There's no like red Martians, I guess, and what else does Barsoom have? It's got the green Martians, the red Martians. I can't remember. It's been too long since I read this stuff. Tharks, those are the green ones. It interrupted my thought process. Barsoom had a huge impact on all of my world development and whatnot. Minimize that so I can see it more. So in the world of Aihrde itself, you can kind of do anything you want with it. There's so much space to expand, so many places that you can put your own setting into, using the mythology that's presented to you in the first 120 pages of the Codex. Now, as a side note to that mythology, what's really, and this is very intentional on my part, one of the things that I didn't like about Greyhawk or other settings that I've played in is it was all very controlled by the creator. The creator had a direction that they wanted it to go and where it came from, and you couldn't really get out of that, not easily. In the world of Aihrde, it's different. In the world of Aihrde, it was basically controlled the previous millennium, previous 1,000 years. The world was controlled by the Winter Dark. So everything that the Unklar and the Winter Dark, everything that came before was dead, destroyed, or gone. There's the echo of it. There's vestiges of kingdoms and rumors of things and whatnot. The Winter Dark has ended. Unklar's been overthrown. It's 80 years later, or 90, I can't remember, something like that. So the world's fresh. So you can actually, as a GM, you can dive into Aihrde and do anything you want with it. There's nothing really that's kind of written in stone. It's very malleable to your gaming style, and that was very intentional on my part, so that anyone who picked up Aihrde could take it and make it their own. You've got tens of thousands of years of history, 12,000 years of written history, but only 90 years of recent history that is that's not long enough really for anything to coalesce. I mean, you're really just kind of getting a little bit of structure at that point. It's very, very easy to adjust to how we want to do it. So, the world of Aihrde itself, like I said, that inset, the large inset box that you're looking at, is the Lands of Ursula. Now, the Lands of Ursula is that map behind me. Let me get this up here. I've got that somewhere there. So, if you'll look, it's roughly equivalent. It obviously scales off on the world thing a little bit compared to the immense amount of detail that Peter Bradley has put into the Lands of Ursula map. The Lands of Ursula map is each inch, I want to say, is 18 miles. Each inch here is 24 miles. So to kind of give you an idea, this is the Darkenfold Forest, and it's very roughly, I think it's about 170 miles here. So I can't remember the exact scale, but roughly the size of the western United States, I think. That would even be smaller than that, actually. Because Arkansas would probably be about that.
Yeah.
Okay, so Arkansas, Missouri, what do we got? No, Mississippi. So this would probably the south, up into Illinois, so the southeastern part of the United States, the lands of Ursula. So large enough for you to stomp around in, definitely, plenty of space. And throughout the lands of Ursula, of course, are multitudes of human kingdoms, several dwarf kingdoms. Though all the dwarven kingdoms, none of them control like exterior land. It's really mountain kingdoms. And then there's a few elven realms, some gnome regions. Everything's kind of integrated into as you read the Codex and kind of understand the history, everything will be, it'll make a little bit more sense. But like the gnomes don't really have kingdoms and that type of thing. But yeah.
Just a couple questions here. You
want
to
fire.
stop in.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's see, who do we want to start with? Babunski, any unusual communities, underwater kingdoms, etc. In the big picture, what I tried to do, Chuck, on those is back off on making anything in the world that wouldn't fit into your world setting, so that I didn't make anything critical that might, you couldn't adjust easily to your game. That said, there's in the southern, if you look at that map, it's sort of where I mentioned the four corners are. There's the land of Koth, and there's dragon men there. There was dwarven kingdoms, the only ones that kind of were outside or on that string of islands that you see. I wish I could get the map up over here, kind of in the center. But I pretty much left most of the unusual and strange stuff to your creation. If you want that in there, there's room to put it in there. But I didn't want to force anything on a game master or a gamer or player that they might not like. Because I've looked at countless settings and I thought, oh, this is really cool. And then you read about this one creature it was just too weird for me, or it didn't fit my style, so I just dropped it. So pretty much I tried to back off on that type of thing in the creation process, leaving that to the individual game masters. Let's see, what do we got? Eraser. Is there any difference between the various people? Do humans from one area have different bonuses than ones from another? No, I don't go into any of that. Homo sapiens are Homo sapiens. The only thing that is differentiating that is going to be whatever game system you play. So I don't think there's no differences in race or gender in Castles and Crusades. It's whether you're a fighter and what you rolled your attributes for. So yeah, no, I didn't go to any of that. Anything that any individual game group or game master wants to do on that, great. But pretty much it's all the same across the board.
You didn't give any boons for Southerners then?
I should have. For Arkansans.
Right. Let me ask Chuck a quick question. This might help us. Hey, Chuck, is there a way in OBS to make your mouse visible on the display? You know what I mean? So, like, he could take his mouse and move it.
Like, can they see that? No, because that's the
twist.
twist.
Right, but there is something that when you're using someone else's, deciding whether or not the mouse can be visible or not. I can't remember what that is, but that would be helpful. Even not this one.
Well, he answers that. I want to get it on the map.
Okay, we'll be back in just a minute with the map. Any questions you guys got? So Chuck's. Okay, there is. All right. Can you just send that to me or Discord or whatever? He said there is a way. There's some options.
Okay, yeah, we gotta figure that out.
We'll definitely figure that out.
It's not gonna work, but I'm gonna try it anyways. Sorta. Yeah. We'll see how long that lasts.
That's too well. You need to move Ursula over maybe a little bit, or shrink Ursula on OBS.
Oh, I see, because they can't see. And let me get OBS back up and let me. Yeah, let's shrink Ursula a little bit. How's that?
Okay, there we go.
So they're gonna barely be able to see that behind my head. We'll get into that in just a second. But okay, so where was I? I think that I answered the questions on cultures, etc. So now so before I go into even, there was something else I wanted to backtrack on. Now I can't remember what it was. So at any rate, so a lot of the histories that you read in the Codex of Aihrde, they follow, to give you a very, very broad spectrum of what's covered. The world's created by the All-Father,
time is created by the All-Father, and then in the void, and then he starts creating things, pulling things from himself, pulling moments, is what I call them, from himself, and creating what eventually become the gods. These are called the Valar Kun. Some he likes, some he doesn't. He sets these aside. He gets bored with this, and he creates the world itself, the world of Aihrde, and it's this kind of, he actually sees the goddess Inzaya, which ties into Davis's own world, tearing the fabric of the void. He doesn't know what Inzaya is. He goes to investigate. He sees that she's created or opened all of this matter into the void, and he creates the world of Aihrde on top of that. His thing is always about creation. All he wants to do is create. It's what he does all the time. Meanwhile, the gods that he created earlier kind of drift to the world of Aihrde itself, kind of follow him, and end up in the world, just kind of drifting into it, and not knowing what it is, not really knowing what's going on. Now, when you get into the mythologies, these gods have already developed personalities. There's three specifically: Corthane and Orindul and Mordias, who are extraordinarily powerful. Orindul can be seen as evil. I don't really like to cast an alignment on the greater gods, on the Valar Kun. They really don't have alignments. They really operate under their own motivations that kind of transcend alignment. But Orindul is seen sort of as an evil. Corthane is lawful good, and Mordias neutral. So these gods and all the other Valar Kun, there's 12 named, and a host, tens of millions unnamed, who end up in the world of Aihrde, and they begin to shape the world despite the Allfather. So he's doing things, and they begin to do things. Some as per their nature, like the goddess Tefnut, she has a great love of water, and she begins to channel water, and from her, rivers and lakes and ponds are born. So all of the gods kind of play a hand in the creation of the actual world of Aihrde itself. Now the gods begin to war and fight with each other. This irritates the Allfather after a while, and he creates what's called the Wall of Worlds, which is this kind of barrier between Aihrde and the void beyond. For lack of to put it into Dungeons and Dragons terms, that would be the ethereal plane. The ethereal plane. The astral plane. Yeah, exactly. I get them always mixed up. I'm going to get that Planescapes book out soon. I'm going to do that book. And it's not going to have tome or tomb in this title anywhere near it. So he creates the Wall of Worlds. Then you've got the world that kind of settles down into rhythms. The gods rule and fight one another for a couple of ages. The Allfather ignores most of this. He doesn't care. They're just like wind. He just doesn't care. But he continues to create. He really wants to create something that he can be truly, truly proud of. And eventually he does, and it's the dwarves. As he's creating the dwarves, he accidentally creates the giants. He discards them. He creates humans. He discards them. He creates gnomes and discards them. Then when he creates the dwarves, this is his greatest accomplishment. The dwarves are the ones who really colonize first. They spread and multiply and all this, and then they colonize across the world of Aihrde. Men are these savage tribes, blah, blah, blah. The gnomes kind of fade into really out of the story completely for many millennium. Now the story gets a little more complex. I won't go into it all in this thread, but essentially the god Orindul, he begins to corrupt some of the dwarves through individually talking to them and pulling out whatever character flaw they may have, whatever trait, evil or egotistical or what have you, twisting it and making it kind of a maligned thing. And these become the Eldritch Goblins eventually, and they breed their own species. So that's how the goblins are come into the earth, and they have this unknowing hatred, unreasoned hatred for dwarves, and the dwarves eventually begin to share that hatred. Long series of 4 wars, I think, 3 Goblin Dwarf Wars, and then the Stone Wars, in which those 2 races utterly destroy one another and leave the world in shambles. At this point, humans are beginning to rise, taken under the wing by Mordias. And there's 13 tribes named. They scatter across the world. I focus on 2 of them in the lands of Ursula. The reasons I focused on these is these are the 2 that actually played into the big game, and this is where the big game kind of ties into the entire creation mythology. There's the Eithrim and the Enochians. The Enochians are, because of several encounters with some of the evil gods, particularly Narhite and Ambricius, the Enochians tend to be a little bit more arrogant, a little bit more self-assured, and they don't need the gods type of things. The Eithrims are the opposite. They are befriended by Tefnut in the valleys of Kaamar, and the gods kind of some of the gods take them under their wings, specifically the August, which you'll run into in a bunch of adventures. that I've written. So the next section of the Codex of Aihrde, this is where the lands of Ursula, if you will, in the first part of the Codex of Aihrde, the histories, everything's about the world of Aihrde. Now, as soon as I focus in on these two tribes, we zero in on the lands of Ursula itself. And when you're looking at the map, this is the one in the upper left-hand corner. Basically, on the right side of the map, to the right of the Sea of Chenal, those are the Enochian lands, and to the left are the Aihrde lands. Now, it's way too generalized because that's not completely accurate. In the middle, they're actually mostly mixed, and the Enochians conquered the Aihrde twice. So, anyways, it's a long 3,000, 2,000 year history. So, a lot happens in that period. So, the Aihrde, generally good. The Enochians, leaning a little bit to the arrogant. I don't want to say evil. That word's thrown around too easily. But they, after many conflicts and whatnot, wars between the two, the Enochians conquer the Aihrdes and enslave them for a while, and the Aihrde overthrow them, etc. When the empire is complete, the Enochian empire collapses and falls to pieces. The last of the dying emperors eventually engage a magic user named Trigal, who summons this god from beyond the Wall of Worlds that I mentioned earlier, from in the Void. This is one of the 12. Now this is where the mythology plays in, and I welcome anyone to read. I mean, the book is filled. It's all explained and it's all kind of covered. When the Allfather created the first Valar Kun, his first thought was so dark and so evil and so horrific that he drove that thought into the deepest part of the void called the Undeep. That thought is Unklar. Now Unklar because he's driven so far away, he has no idea that anything like this is the world. He doesn't know anything about anything that's happened in the time from the first wind and the early wars of the gods and the creation of all that blah blah blah. So Trigal the Wall of Worlds, of course, goes up and keeps, I don't know if I mentioned this, one of the reasons the Wall of Worlds was put up was to keep creatures from coming from the void to the world of Aihrde. Those creatures, those Valar Kun that were in Aihrde were kind of trapped. Those that were not could not get in because of the Wall of Worlds. So Trigal, this magic user, in trying to attempt to bring power back to the Enochians, though really bring it to himself, begins to dabble in ancient dwarven and goblin sorceries, and he discovers something called the blood runes. Nope, those come later. He discovers something. There's a lot of so many of these elements at play. There's like 12 types of runes. It's the winter runes that he discovers. So he discovers the winter runes, and he uses these winter runes to cross through the Wall of Worlds and into the void, and he starts searching for anything that he can use to conquer the Aihrde. What he finds is this patch of darkness in the Undeep. And of course, not knowing what Trigal is or what this magic user is or what any of this stuff is, the darkness just listens to him. He just kind of settles in and lets him instruct him on what's going on. But of course, the darkness, being Unklar, being one of the Valar Kun, is infinitely more powerful than the mage can ever imagine, and easily, plies the waters of Trigal's mind and learns everything about the world of Aihrde that he could ever want to know. Eventually, Trigal summons this god. The moment he summons him through and into the plane, he knows it's a mistake, and he tries immediately to stop it, but it's too late. He's brought Unklar in through the Wall of Worlds to the world of Aihrde, and he's immediately put into chains and bound. The Emperor of the Enochians is slain. The High Priest is slain. Unklar pretty much starts killing everybody and proceeding to conquer the world. He conquered it, and this is kind of the break in the big game. This is where we dove into the world of Aihrde. When I got into the army, these are the adventures we ran for about a decade as they were struggling to fight Unklar. They lost. Unklar conquered the world, covered it in World of Winter Dark for 1,000 years, killed all of the characters, except Mac. Somehow the mage he covered himself in some kind of magic. I can't remember what he was. I believe he was at the bottom of the ocean forever, tied to ill or service, or maybe he was in the abyss. I'd have to ask Mac. It's been so long since, and we played. And in those days, when I moved to Little Rock in '95, or 96, we played a lot. We played 12, 15-hour game sessions every week. It was crazy. In fact, when my daughter was born, Rachel, Kathy was in the hospital. I was gaming when Rachel was being born. So, I've got an understanding wife.
Yes, you do.
She doesn't game at all, so I say that. She's on her phone, works with friends or something. I don't know what she's doing. But anyway, so that's kind of where the big game, it all kind of ties together. Ursula comes in, conquers, and then what begins is this epic 5-year struggle to overthrow Unklar. And those are the winter, when you get into the Codex, there's about 20-odd pages that detail the Winter Dark Wars. Those are essentially details of the campaign and the story that we were running year by year by year. And that's only kind of that's really only just kind of a touch of what we did in those days. But so they eventually overthrow Unklar, drive him from the plane, free the world from the Winter Dark, and now you have the world of Aihrde kind of reborn. And that's where you guys step in. If you scoop up the world setting itself, you'll see that it, like I mentioned earlier, it ends. The Winter Dark ended just 90 years ago. There's old men, there's elves, certainly, and dwarves who have memories, who lived and grew up. So if you play a dwarf and you're 140 years old, you grew up during the Winter Dark. I mean, you remember the Winter Dark Wars, which is nice, and it's one of the strengths of the Codex, of the world of Aihrde, and really the Codex. When you get into it, if you play a character that's 250 years old, you can very easily go to the back of the book, and there's a detailed timeline of 12,000 years of history, 7 or 8 pages of it, that you can look back to when you were born and see the major events that occurred. So your character, when you develop your character, that comes into play. I mean, you would know this stuff. We got one of the guys at the table who's playing the dwarf. We're in I think it's, I can't remember the years all mixed up in my head. I think it's 1190, and we're in 1211 now. So they've been adventuring for like 14 years or something, because we started it in 92 or whatever. But the dwarf there is 240, and he fought in some of those major battles at the end of the Winter Dark War. So it's really kind of cool. It allows the character more development and to bring the history to the table. And the Codex is just laced with that stuff. So, and even if you're playing an elf who's 1,000 years old, or in the world of Aihrde, elves are immortal, so you would remember these things. And you've got this gigantic book of information here, this Codex, this tome. I have to say it very slowly. Of information that allows you to kind of open up just worlds of character development, and I think that's probably one of the strengths of the world of Aihrde and the Codex. It's one of the things I like best. Going forward, I started this years ago and got interrupted doing 10,000 other projects, but I'm really thinking that this is when I can get back to it. We've got what we call expansion books, and if you look here, we've got. Now I've got stuff in my way. It's just a little short, 24-page book, and this covers the Darkenfold. Now, in the lands of Ursula, the Darkenfold is here. This is that area. And if you look in the map, if you have it, or when you look into it, everything's kind of detailed. You've got the Troll Glades, the River Basin, the Downs, the Willow Break, Uplands, Heth's Perch, the Malorian, Elkhorn Deeps. You've got all kinds of regions. It's just like if you go to any part of your state, any part of your country, everything's named. Right. Everything's got Crowley's Ridge. People know what these terrains are, these pieces of terrain are. The locals do. And you've got it in the map here, certainly detailed. Now, in these expansion books, like in this one is the expansion book of the Darkenfold, it'll come with its own map, which is even more detailed than the lands of Ursula. And it's got everything is described. So if you're looking at this map here, there's the Elkhorn Deeps. I don't know if these are somewhere in here. See, it's done by region. So let's just say, there's the Troll Lake. So right here we've got Heth's Perch, which is these little hills here. Those little hills here, Heth's Perch. And we've got an entire description of what Heth's Perch is. Who lives there, what it's like, a little bit of stories behind it. I try to put adventure hooks in almost everything I do, so that if you're adventuring in that region, you can open the book and say, okay, look, here's this group of gnomes. In fact, that's what I did Thursday. I had forgotten that in the Valewood in the Darkenfold, where I do most of my games is in the Darkenfold. In the Valewood, there's these gnomes, and I'd completely forgotten they were there. characters are going through it, trying to make a secret trail. So I just opened up the expansion book, went to the Velwood, talks about these gnomes, Green Hills, not the Velwood, and I quickly kind of formulated it, and a whole encounter based upon these gnomes that I was able to pull out of the expansion book. The idea is we've already divided long time ago. Some of you old timers know we divided this into 9 sections. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. I'm probably gonna break that up a little bit more. But each of these expansion books, we've just finished Gotland. This one. Each of these expansion books that we put out will help you as you get into it, give you more detail on the regions that you happen to be running your adventures in. I like this chair rolling back and forth. Kind of nice. So that's the hope for in the future. That stuff is very, very easy for me to write because I have so many notes. I've had characters crawling all over the lands of Ursula behind me, so I just got tons of stuff and I can just easily develop it. Plus, it's already the terrain itself is already named on the Lands of Ursula map, so it's easy to kind of dive into. Do we have any more questions?
No, Racer just commented on the old Judge's Guild.
Yeah, that's essentially. I did some of the early Judges Guild stuff, the adventures of Skulls and Scrap Faggot Green is still my favorite. Is that a fantastic adventure? That's ironic. We've got an adventure called The Fantastic Adventure. I don't know if that's irony.
No.
I don't think it's irony at all. It's wordplay.
Not for you. It's just not something you do.
It's true. No, not very well. Not very often and not very well. It'll be like that because I forgot they had done that. I know their stuff has gotten so it's all over the place these days. But Judges Guild back in the day, for those of you who may not know, TSRD Dungeons Dragons and Judges Guild kind of did this stuff that you could play with Dungeons and Dragons, but a lot of it was really, really, really cool. All right, so we got a question.
Yeah, no,
You want to read that?
Sure. Hi, Trolls. I have a question. What is the origin of the idea behind Eldritch Goblins, and can you go into how they have played out into your campaign?
Yeah, absolutely. So, the Eldritch Goblins was kind of a concept I came up with. I can't remember what level they were, about 12th level or something like that. And I wanted to mix things up just a little bit. And this is where I really began to kind of drop good and evil as part of, there's definitely evil. Make no mistake. And I go out of my way to make certain that people understand that some things are just evil. Imbricius is just evil. There are just things that are evil. But on the goblins, their story is a little bit different because they're dwarves. And the dwarves, in the early days, the dwarves mostly stayed in tight kinship groups, but some of them wandered off to explore this huge world that they thought was empty. Of course it wasn't. It had animals and some of the Valar Coon already wandering all over it. But these dwarves wandered off in groups alone or in very small groups and began to kind of colonize everywhere. These fall out of history completely. I don't have hardly anything on whatever these were. They weren't called anything. They're just dwarves that wandered out far and wide. So this gets a little bit complicated, but Narhite is the god of chaos. Now Narhite's probably my favorite god. He's easy, if you read the Codex, it's easy to think that Narhite is evil, but he is, but he just likes to mess things up, really. He likes to look at something. He's like that kid on the playground who just kicks stuff over for no reason. He just kicked it over. He's an imp. Yeah. So Narhite just goes around and does these things. And at one point, Orndul, in the early days before the dwarves, Orndul, who's one of the named Valar Coon, one of the early creations of the Allfather, he took to the darkness most of all. He loved to go underground. And he fashioned beautiful things for himself, gold and silver, gems and stuff like that. So fast forward a gazillion years, when the dwarves began creating their kingdoms and began to tunnel and delve, and they really do this because in the early days the gods are warring amongst themselves and it's dangerous to be on the surface. So the dwarves go underground fairly quickly. Well, they begin to find these things that Orndul had hidden for his own amusement and pleasure. Orndul didn't even understand that these were being found. The world is a vast place, and he had other things to do. And if he did understand it, it wasn't really at a conscious level. But Narhite saw a perfect opportunity to mess with everybody, not only the Allfather's favorite creation, but the dwarves and Orndul himself. So he goes to Orndul and basically says, it's written better than I'm going to say it, in that it's more complicated than I'm going to say it. Because he basically, there's bigger picture themes going on, that some of the Valar Raccoon believe they're being replaced by the dwarves and the humans and whatnot, intentionally by the Allfather. Of course, on the Allfather's perspective, he doesn't hardly even know the Valar Raccoon exist. He made him, he moved on, he doesn't care. So there's all kinds of thematic things going on here. So some of the Valar Raccoon feel somewhat threatened by these upstarts, and Narhite plays on this when he talks to Orndul and says, these dwarves, who are eventually going to rise in power above you if you don't do something, have stolen or have laid claim to your gems and gold and whatnot. So Orndul goes to, in a fit of rage, he goes to the kingdom of the dwarves, the main kingdom of the dwarves, and he speaks to their, I think it was Argrine Dark Eye was the dwarven king's name. Now that dwarf king is extraordinarily arrogant and extraordinarily powerful, and will have nothing to do with his Valar Raccoon. He doesn't really understand the power of Orndul, that Orndul could have killed him immediately or what have you, but things don't really play out like that. And Orndul doesn't want to do it. He doesn't know how the Allfather will react, and all of these other things. And there's a hint of fear inside Orndul because Narhite said, look, these guys are more powerful than you realize. You better nip them in the bud. So Orndul doesn't know what he's dealing with. But the dwarf just assumes some kind of upstart demon has come to his kingdom and laid claim to his stuff, and he tells him to be off. Well, this infuriates Orndul. He doesn't really know whether he should make open war or whatnot. He's already had 2 wars at this point with the Valar Raccoon, and he was driven to ground. Well, he won one, but he was driven to ground by the other one. He doesn't want to spark another war. His fortifications aren't ready. There's all kinds of other things that he's working on in the homeless house and the wretched plains and all this other business that he really wants to make certain or set to right before he goes to war with anybody. So what he does do is he heads out into the world, takes guys, and he heads out into the world of Aihrde, and he begins to hunt down dwarves to see what these creatures are, to better understand who he's dealing with. And he finds these groups of dwarves, these ones I mentioned earlier that were just wandering the plains or wherever by themselves. And he begins to corrupt them. Now, Orndul is a god of extraordinary power. I don't stat the Valar. I don't stat any of the gods. I don't stat the Valar Raccoon because they are extremely powerful. Orndul is so powerful that his rage opened the flesh of the Allfather, which is inconceivable because the Allfather is the creator of all. So it's not Odin, it's the creator of all. So Orndul is himself exceedingly powerful. I mean, he's beyond the scope of any mortal creature. So, but when he talks to these dwarves, these lonely, lost dwarves in the wilderness, or happy, lonely dwarves, they were very happy out there, by, no phones ringing or whatever. But when he talks to them, he quickly understands who and what they are, their minds. He can read their minds, their thoughts, see their past, and all of this stuff. But he takes advantage of them and begins to corrupt them. He sees a perfect opportunity to corrupt these creatures. He doesn't have to make open war. He can corrupt them. And I've actually written about, this is what we should give away to everyone. In fact, we should give away now. I wrote a series of books and a series of stories in a book called Of Gods and Monsters of Aihrde. And I got 4 of the goblins. I meant to pull this up. I goofed this up. Right, so I got 4 of these goblins kind of outlined in there. And essentially, I've got a lot of these little stories. I just need to clean them up, put them out. But each of these dwarves is corrupted, made to be evil for whatever reason, and however it comes to pass by Orndul's thought. Even him speaking to one of these dwarves twisted the dwarf. These creatures eventually, the weight and the poison of Orndul's magic changes them, shifts them, wears them out, grinds them away. They continue to live. In fact, they become immortal because they spoke to Orndul, so they can't die. That's actually one of the reasons that the Eldritch Goblins are who they are. They can't die because of the poison, because of the breath of Orndul. That's how powerful Orndul is. So these creatures, these Eldritch Goblins, now filled with hate and evil and twisted, begin to wander the world. They eventually begin to breed. There's one of them who becomes the queen. She's Oglelte, the goddess of the goblins. She also becomes, she's even more corrupted by Orandul, so that she begins to lay these horrific eggs from which goblins are born. And goblins are sort of like, in the world of Aihrde, I say this very loosely, but sort of like ants. So as the queen lays these eggs, they hatch, and the goblins come out with really only one purpose. The Eldritch Goblins are those goblins with a mind of their own, an understanding of the world around them and all of this. Most goblins, very simple, great love of water, flowing, gardening, water, stuff like that. Not gardening and water, but gardening water. Yeah, they build waterfalls and, canals and all that stuff. But they're singularly evil creatures. So the Eldritch Goblins are kind of this, for lack of a better way of looking at it, this ruling elite. This doesn't really work out that way amongst all of these other goblins, because much like in an ant community, some of the goblins that are born are soldiers, some are workers, some are, overlords of the others. So it's a complicated society in the goblin world. But that's where the Eldritch Goblins play in. Now, as time progresses, because they're immortal, an Eldritch Goblin is only given one weakness, known only to Orandul, and this is, you can't kill them. There's no killing an Eldritch Goblin unless there's, like, one may die if he's stabbed with iron, one can only be drowned, this type of thing. So they're immortal other than this one weakness, the weakness known only to itself and to Orandul himself. So, the Eldritch Goblins, they're the ones that actually bring sorcery to the world. Anlush, the most powerful of the Eldritch Goblins, masters the art of sorcery, which is the language of creation, which is the language that the Allfather used to create everything. So when these Eldritch Goblins, gifted by knowledge from Orandul, begin to learn pieces of, this is where it all comes together. So when they begin to learn pieces of the language of creation, they take these words, form into rune magic, and this rune magic is what they use to wage war on the dwarves and eventually destroy all the dwarven kingdoms. Of course, the dwarves destroy all of their kingdoms in this gigantic wasting war called the Stone Wars. But the magic now sorcery has entered the world via Orandul, via the Eldritch Goblins. So Orandul, Eldritch Goblins, sorcery. But now the sorcery is scattered all over the place, mostly in these runes and magic and hidden in deep pools and what have you. Fast forward years later, the Eldritch Goblins, their kingdoms destroyed, their society is wiped out, are wandering listless across the world. Some are eventually enslaved by Unklar. They do whatever it is, 1,000 adventures. They're their own creation. The goblins slowly begin to rebuild their kingdoms, just like the dwarves do, but never to the extent that they were before the Goblin Dwarf Wars. Fast forward a little bit further, that rune magic that I mentioned earlier, the winter runes that Trigol found that allowed him to breach the Wall of Worlds to bring Unklar to the plane, was actually magical runes that Anlush the Goblin had created millennia before. So that kind of gives you an idea of everything strung together in this pretty tight fabric of tales and mythology that, one, gives you a coherent world setting, but also allows you as a GM, DM, CK, whatever, to get in there and muck with it. You can read the Codex and pull out adventure hooks all over the place. You can tie the history into your characters. You can tie the NPCs and monsters into the game that you want to do. It's all really was very consciously tailored and written for you guys, for anyone, any gamer to do that. Did I answer the question?
Yeah.
Okay.
I think so. I mean, I thought so.
I do feel like I need to give, when we redo the Monsters and Treasures of Aihrde, I'm going to give the Eldritch Goblins a much bigger page spread, because I really need to go into to give like 100 examples of how they can die, and then give them 100 examples of their powers, because I'm so light on that in the Monsters of Aihrde. I think that it's kind of confusing, and it needs more detail, more examples really.
Well, look at that. He ordered the tome and the screens.
Oh, very good. So how can we get everyone who's listening a PDF like right now? Is that even possible?
Which one?
I don't even know if it's. I've got a PDF of it, but I don't think it's on any store anywhere.
So if you guys would like, email me. I will put it in here. If you're watching now and you want it, tim@crowlord.com, and we'll figure out how to get it to you.
So what I'm specifically talking about is a little book we did
we did a box set called The Adventurer's Backpack 4 years ago or something like that, and it was kind of a teaser to the Adventurer's Backpack book that we were working on. But in the box set, I wrote, and this has been on my docket for a long time, a little book called Of Gods and Monsters of Aihrde. And in this book, I've got 5 or 6 of the stories of goblins and how they were changed, how Orandul interacted with them and twisted them and changed them into these into the Eldritch Goblins. So I'd like to do that to everybody for free.
All right, cool, yeah. Just email me there, guys, and I'll get it to you. There was Blue Materia had a question up there, and I was just about telling you.
Hey, trolls. I copy-pasted a question I posed a while back in the forum. I've been reading through the Codex of Aihrde. Well, he's got the old one. Aihrde, as I have an old copy, and I feel like perhaps I simply missed it, but why exactly is Morgeld immortal? So Morgeld is the son of Luther the Paladin and a succubus. So the succubus itself being, in the world of Aihrde, demons and devils are Valar Kun. When the Allfather created life first in the void, I frequently talk about the 12 named Valar Kun. The reason I specifically say named is there's a host of unnamed Valar Kun, of which the demons and devils are some of them. So those creatures are all immortal. None of them die. So a succubus is not, it's an immortal creature. So when Luther was seduced by the succubus, and let me tell you, this made Todd Gray so mad. He still gets mad at me today. And this was back in, God, this was a long time ago. That was 20 years ago, 15 years ago. Because, as you all know, now this is pre-CNC, this is pre-3rd edition, this has been 1st edition, this is AD&T. Paladins cannot be touched by demons and devils, right? So, or something like that. Todd, I don't know, Todd had to explain it to me, but yeah, he said he never could have been seduced. So it was quite an it was quite an argument. But anyway, so Luther the Paladin is seduced by the succubus. Their child is Morgeld, and so Morgeld himself is actually immortal. That's how his immortality comes about. He's one of my favorite characters because in the tales and the mythologies, he switches. Sometimes he's very evil and sometimes he's very good. So I just kind of move him left and right, to whatever his mood is, because he's a lunatic. He's chaotic.
An additional question. I missed the beginning.
Hey, hold on. Epi had something before.
Oh, he did.
What did he say? Would the Codex of Aihrde be like a novel or more of a loose-knit collection of stories? I think in the Codex, the first part's called the Andanuth. We actually have that novel format that you can purchase. The Andanuth itself is, I would say, a collection of stories. It reads, from the beginning of end. There's a linear aspect to the Andanuth, to the Codex of Aihrde's mythologies, but it definitely is stories. It's vignettes. I don't, chunks of it. So I don't know. It's hard to say. I would say it's vignettes more than an actual novel from beginning. It's organized sort of like the Silmarillion. You want to read that other?
You go ahead.
One additional question. I missed the beginning of the stream, so this might have been covered, but if a CK wanted to set a campaign during the Winterdark, is there enough information in the Codex of Aihrde to set something during that time? I own the book, but have not read it yet. There's not much on the Winterdark. I mean, there is. You'll get there's probably about 4 or 5 pages where it's covered. You're really basically, you're going to be a little bit on your own. I eventually would actually we've had a lot of requests for games in the Winterdark. I'd eventually like to write a source book on that, just 30 or 40 pages, just to get an idea. Because things are in there, but I don't think it's going to be packaged easily. For instance, when you read the whole mythology in the very beginning of time, before the Allfather created, in the beginning of the world, before the Allfather created the sun and moon, Aihrde was in darkness, and there were already creatures in Aihrde, some of them needing to eat, and Mordias wanted there to be plants and trees and all of this other business. So she created this type of grass, this foliage that grows, and they'll just... Actually, I won't get this messed up. Okay, so the Allfather creates the moon, and then so there's just a little bit of light on the world, and this age lasts a very long time. But it's not enough to keep things alive or to allow Mordias' vision of grass and trees and stuff to come to fruition.
being impatient, she plants, and I cannot remember the name of the plant, but she begins to plant this type of plant that survives only under the light of the moon, which of course is a very, very weak light. It's nothing like the sun. When the sun is born, when the sun is created, most of these plants just die off. They only survive, of course, in very hidden, tucked away, high altitude. Wherever the sunlight is very weak, these plants survive. Otherwise, they're all exterminated. Fast forward to the winter dark. Once Unklar puts the shroud of darkness over the world, blocking out the light of the sun, there's mass starvation everywhere because nothing will grow. There's no crops. There's nothing, right? Everything begins to die off, except these plants that Mordias had created in the age when the moon was alive begin to thrive again. So there's actually foodstuffs to eat. But that information isn't going to be easy for you to package. Isn't going to be easy for you to extract from the 5 or 6 to 10 pages that actually cover the actual winter dark. You're going to be a little bit on your own. I think it's very doable. I think you really let me look at what pages those are. You really you're going to have to kind of stretch your wings a little bit and use some of the world building material to get your temperatures down. You know how cold it is and whatnot, and then kind of dive in a little bit into the Winter Dark War section. But if you go to pages, what is this? About page 80. Yeah, roughly about page 76. Yeah, the 6th oration. So about page 76 to about 90. That should give you a chunk to play in the Winter Dark. Enough, I think, to get you going. You're probably going to have to make up some of your own, because the kingdoms are all gone, or there's the shell of them. It's broken apart into provinces. There's 13 realms that the 13 captain kings control, and this is all over the world of Aihrde in the big map, not the lands of Ursula. I think, if I remember correctly, Beelzebub had the lands beyond the map of the maps of Ursula, and in Ursula itself is where Trigol, he eventually kind of re-rises in power, is kind of the seneschal of Alstrag and Unklar, and he controls the lands of Ursula. So, yeah, you're going to have a little bit of hobbling to do, but I think it's doable. Yeah, it's been we've talked about it a lot. I've run a few games in the Winter Dark. I make them extremely hard because the world is controlled by Unklar, who is a lawful evil god, and his lawful evil priesthood, and the lawful evil orcs. It's all evil and controlled. It's not chaotic. It's so it's a tough world but fun. It was fun. I think they all died every time we played, but but it was a lot of fun. We enjoyed it. So this is the dust on it. This is the Andanuth. This is the novel. This is the novelization of the first part of the Codex of Aihrde. And just to put kind of things in reference, Andanuth is a dwarven word. It's really not a word. It's a concept. Well, it's a word, I suppose. It's a concept. You can't easily translate it, but it's the debt of life. It's early on, the dwarves, when they were created, the first of the dwarves who could speak, thanked the Allfather for life and said, "What can we do to repay you?" And then the Allfather looked at the dwarf, said nothing, and then went back to his forge and began to work on whatever he was working on. So the dwarves took that to mean, and this is why dwarves are so industrious, the dwarves took that to mean, the only way you can thank me is to work and to build and to create and to to work the rest of your life. So the Andanuth is kind of the debt of life. That's what the title of that source section of the book and the section of the world is called.
What is that again that you were giving away? I was going to put it
It is a little PDF called Of Gods and Monsters of Aihrde.
Okay.
And it's just got little short stories and vignettes on these characters. Babunski, yeah, we've got, and to kind of round out that comment, there's the Codex of Aihrde, of course, and then there's the Andanuth and these expansion books, and then we've got the Player's Guide to Aihrde. So in the Player's Guide to Aihrde, I took essentially all of the races and made them their own classes. There's dwarf is a race, halfling is a race, elf is a race, and then I took their histories and kind of expanded it. When you get in the Codex of Aihrde, the mythologies really focus on the dwarven epic and then the human epic, and the elves are players in it, but I don't really focus on them. The halflings and the gnomes, the same thing. Orcs also. But in the Player's Guide to Aihrde, I try to redress that somewhat and give more attention, so that because I've got all these mythologies written on the elves, the lands of 7 rivers, where they came from, the gnomes too, and all this stuff. So it was nice to kind of flesh all of that out for players who really, that's what you need to know. If you're playing an elf, you kind of need to know what the elf is without spending 12 hours pouring through the Codex, grabbing out vague references here and there. And then, then we've got, there's the A series adventures that we have in both Castles and Crusades and 5th edition. Keeping in mind the Codex of Aihrde is its own setting, you don't need to play any game or work in it, but we've converted the A series, which is 13 because of A0. 13 adventures we've converted to the World of Air, or we've converted to 5th edition, and those are adventures that take you from Enochiad all the way to Elfstrag, which is where Unklar ruled from during the Winterdark. And then we've got the C series, which is, there's 7 of those. Those are in the Darkenfold. Then there's a bunch of little ones that are in the Aihrde, Line of the Ropes. And there's a whole bunch of them. Yeah. We've got a lot of adventure material. And each of those adventures, because I tend to drone on, tend to have a lot of background material. It's been one of the challenging things, is to go back and find stuff and pull it out. Yeah, because it's all over the...
Right, you're a historian by nature. You like to throw all that stuff in there.
I like lots of texts. It makes me happy. Was the races class portion of the player's guide a throwback to original basic D&D? Was that how you actually have the players roll up their characters in the Aihrde campaign? It was a throwback, definitely. I don't think anyone at the table plays one of those classes. I've always liked that concept. I think that's way D&D, right? That's like basic Dungeons and Dragons. I always liked the concept of I'm playing a dwarf. It's just a cool idea, but we were so our game is so rooted in advanced Dungeons and Dragons where that wasn't the case, and then of course we converted to Castles and Crusades in 04, 05, something around in there, whenever we came out with it. That the race classes really wasn't part of the way we played. So I don't think it's funny. We got someone's character got killed the other night. She's trying to figure out what she should play next. Maybe I'll push the Codex of Aihrde in her. Or the player's got to Aihrde. Maybe she'll like to play a race as class. It's an interesting concept, but it's something that I'm just not. I never got. We did very much. Members of the Mafia.
I was gonna mention my favorite.
What's
Houseless God. And aren't you doing?
Yeah, that. Where is that? I got that somewhere around here. I've done quite a few short stories on Aihrde. They've come out in various Kickstarters as support material. And A Houseless God and Other Tales is my favorite. Yeah, I enjoyed writing that. That's about Ulrich Gunshoff. And what I'm doing in this, and I got another expansion almost done. Yeah, for the Monsters and Treasures Kickstarter. Right. I'm doing the next 3 or 4 tales of Ulrich. And essentially, Ulrich, I'm not going to tell you what class he is because he doesn't know what class he is. I try to write the stories as if it's not class-based, but when you read them, you should be able to kind of discern what's going on. So the first short story is about Ulrich alone, adventuring in the Darkenfold, and then the second one I think is the same, and then the third one he meets Ava, another, I'm not going to say which class, but another character that introduces, and they become friends. And then they travel through the fourth one is an adventure that they have. And then in the fifth one, it's going to get a little bit convoluted, but I'm going to introduce more characters in the 5th through 8th one. Those are the ones I'm working on now. But that too is for sale on the site.
Yeah. It is, yeah. And that one, that's probably just my favorite piece. You don't even have to know classes or anything, really. It's just a good bit of writing. That's really cool.
You.
All right.
Yeah, those are just short stories. And that's one of the things that we're trying to free up some of my time so that I can shift into just writing the tales of Aihrde, kind of expanding. I'd love to take Ulrich Gunshoff and write just novels on him and what will eventually become people that he travels with.
That reminds me though. I have a vote about whether Aihrde is flat or round. If we can ever figure out somebody that can make us a globe. It needs to be around just so we can put it in a globe.
I agree. You're right. Globes are awesome.
Yeah, we tried that a while back. Remember we tried to find someplace
everywhere.
And there's got to be somebody that can do that. Yep. But we both love maps and globes and stuff. So
somewhere, a guy who used to work for us as an editor, I don't know what software he used, but we've got a spinning globe on the digital.
Yeah, on the
somewhere.
Digital thing. Yeah. So it's already sort of converted in that.
I love that thing. That would be now this just to let everyone know, of course, this is the Darkenfall map from the expansion book. Get out of the way, but this is one of those school grade maps that you would see as a child in front of the chalkboard. You know, this is what, and it goes back up and comes back down. Now, they're pretty expensive to make, so you can get them online, but I mean, we sell them, but they're pretty stout. But what I would like to do is take, and when you look at the world map that's in the corner here of the stream, I've got that map replicated 4 times, I think, maybe 3. One of them will show you all of the wind currents in the world of Aihrde, and each of those wind currents is named. You'll see like the anvil wind carries moisture into the lands of Ursula and this type of stuff. One of them is migrations. One of them is, I can't remember what the other ones are, but anyway, there's several of them. But it would be nice to have each one of them so you could pull down.
Right.
While you're gaming, it's just whatever you need. The map is right there. Yeah. I'm a huge map gamer. I love dungeon maps. I love world maps, setting maps, any of it. I love maps. You love maps.
Oh yeah.
You can never have enough maps. There is no doubt.
Cool. Any other questions so far?
How about a beach volleyball? I think that might be part of another conversation.
Well, yeah. I think he was talking about the round, maybe. Who knows? Epi's there. He was our first. Oh, I guess before we wrap up too, we should talk about the fact we have our subs. And I don't want to stop the Aihrde conversation. You guys have any questions about Aihrde? Throw them out there.
Fire away.
But I'm going to talk a little bit about what we decided today. We've put together for you people who have subscribed to our channel. We finally have these things out. And again, Steve and I are newbies at this. Chuck has been helping us out. Babunski has been instrumental in kind of helping us figure out this world to work in, the Twitch world. But there's certain things when you subscribe to our channel, and so if you go in at tier 1 right now, you're going to get the loyalty sub badge, which you can see over there that Melkor and Epi have. That gets you that badge. That's the 1 to 3 month badge. And then there's the cheer emotes, which at tier 1 you get one of them. Which, Chuck, let's see, what is the first one? I believe it's the TLG heart. And then you're also going to get the sub only chats. Probably once a month we'll do, maybe more, who knows, we'll do something for, thank you, yeah, that's it. Subs, for people who are subbing, you can get we'll just do a chat where it's just only people that are in the subs. We can have a little more intimate conversation. And then also over on our Discord channel that we have set up, there'll be a sub-only Discord channel over there as well. Right now, it's small, but we expect this to grow, so we would love to have you in on the beginning. Now, that's at the tier 1. Now, if you go to tier 2, you're going to get an extra cheer emote. I'm sorry, I skipped right through the best part, I think. At tier 1, you get a 10% discount on the store. So anything you buy in the store, for that month, you get a coupon code. I'll send it out to you, and you get 10% off everything in the store. So that, and you go to tier 2, that becomes a 15% discount in the store. So let's say you wanted to buy the Codex of Aihrde, you'll get 15% off of it. And also at this tier 2 level, you're going to get a digital reward of just basically a flat $10 off digital. So you'll always get your 15% discount, but you also are going to get a $10 reward that'll get you any kind of PDF you want to. And then tier 3, basically the same as tier 2, but you're going to have a 20% discount in the store and a $20 digital reward. I think that's what we decided.
Yeah, absolutely.
And you get that third emote on there. And as we grow, as we get to 15 subscribers, I think we get another emote, so that would go to you as well. And we've been playing with the ideas. These aren't set in stone. These are the ones you're going to get for sure. But we've also talked about maybe at the higher levels running some games where we include some tier 3 people, where Steve runs a game, Chuck runs a game, anybody on our channel. We are going to try to get you guys involved, because that's basically what we like so much about Twitch, is that we can sit here and talk to you guys, and you can write back to us. It's instant, instant feedback. and we can also have a chance to do some things that we can't normally do, even through our social media. So we're loving this, and we're loving the Discord. If you're not on our Discord, Chuck, if you could throw up an invite for that'd be great. And then we'd love to make sure you guys are over hanging out there. Chuck is working really hard to get. For all of you who don't know that, Chuck is Baboonsky, and he has been sort of instrumental in getting the Discord channel running and the Twitch channel, and he's going to be doing some more work for us. So he's setting up all of that stuff for us, and we're very thankful. But let's get you guys into the Discord so you can kind of chat like we're doing now, ask us questions, all that stuff. Squeaky chair.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, for Melkor, yeah, absolutely, man. That'd be great. I think, and this is the way. This is really. You and I were talking about this earlier. Of all the social media, this is the first time Twitch seems to have brought it all together. So, yeah, as soon as they've kind of gotten into my thick noggin how to do the fantasy ground stuff, and CNC's been on the fantasy grounds forever, but I've never quite gotten my head around how to do it and all that business. But so within a few weeks we'll be able to do a game, and that would be, we open it up to subscribers, and it'll be a lot of fun.
Right, and I think the sky's the limit there. We can always run games. We can also start trying to get other people that can run games. Like Chuck or John and other people on our channel, so that. Be all sorts of different things that we're going to do here as well, not just games, but things like this with Aihrde. We'll run a special on this. We may do an Amazing Adventures thing to kind of explain to people.
For anyone just coming in, I haven't moved a lot in the past minute. Well, I twitched like some kind of bird looking for seed, but what Twitch is talking about is this.
Yeah.
It's pretty noisy.
It is noisy. It's like old grandpa.
That's right. I got a rocking chair in the room in there that literally creaks. My wife won't let me sit in it because
we need some WD-40 for this thing.
This chair needs to find a new home.
That's just not mine.
Well, what I actually don't like about this chair is comfortable, but I bought this. You can't see it, I guess, in the stream, but I've got this desk that was made in the 50s, and it's one of those old metal school desks that you've probably all seen with the metal desk. It's just a great desk, but the chair won't roll under it. It won't fit. So it's quite enough. I'm tripping over it all the time. Every time I come in and water the plants or look out the window, whatever. But the gaming chairs that both of my sons have arms that go up.
Right, they can lift up. And
I can slide it under it. So this chair's, enjoy it, Twitchy. Enjoy the squeaking, because
pretty soon it's going to be gone.
And then that one will start squeaking.
And I've told you before, right? And my dad had a metal desk like this in his office. And when I used to go and hang out with him when he was working, I would sleep underneath that.
Oh, really?
Yeah. And he'd be seeing patients, and I would just be sleeping right there.
That's awesome.
Yeah, it's kind of fun. I love it. I love that desk, actually. It's heavier than anything. And
oh, my God. Yeah. And we've got one in the print shop, 3 in the mailroom. No, two in the print shop, 2 in the mailroom, and 1 right here. These things are heavy.
Yeah. Well, I was telling somebody today, they were asking, we were talking about books on Discord, and I said, yeah, I've gotten rid of most of my books. My dad had a ton of books, and I said, I will never offer to help Steve move.
Yeah, I've got
everything in the house. You've got thousands upon thousands of books, and everything is heavy and solid.
It's about 4,000 to 5,000 hardcover history books. Most of it's history. A little bit of fiction in there.
It was a lot easier moving you when you lived in little apartments and stuff. We could just pack everything in the back of a truck and just move on.
Yeah, years ago I ran out of money. I mean, I had no money, and I didn't know what I was going to do. I had to leave the apartment. They weren't evicting me, but they were evicting me very nicely. And Tim showed up. I was working at a hamburger joint, and Tim showed up in the drive-thru and said, hey, I need to get something out of your house. And I said, I gave him my keys, and in those days everybody was in my house.
Right.
And then he comes back at like 11:30 and he drops the keys off. And you were in the truck. You had a pile of crap in the truck.
Oh, yeah.
I didn't pay any attention. So I went home like at midnight, and there was nothing left except I think you left a 6-pack of Dr. Pepper and something and a house key.
Oh yeah, that's right.
Or something, and I went to live with him. He had completely moved me out of the apartment, threw most of my stuff in the dumpster.
Yeah, which was good. Most of it was crap. Anyway.
Oh, it was just a bunch of
But
crap.
I'll tell you that was a good start, because you're still the, what do they call it? There's a Klaus Kinski movie about the man in the walls, or something like that. There was it was some sort of horror movie, and my family still refers to you as because you lived downstairs and you were so quiet, and my brother would come by and be like, "Steve here?" Yeah, he's here. But you would just be in the
That's
shower.
right. I lived way downstairs in the not the basement. Y'all had a second floor thing.
Yeah.
That was a nice. That was better than my apartment. Let me tell you.
Oh, Epi had a question. He said, "Is it possible to start a repository of pre-gens on the site? I see a lot of folks that want to run games for new folks, and this could be helpful."
Discord. I mean, or on.
Are you talking Discord, Epi? Because that's where I'd like to do it. I would like to, or at least on the Google Drive or whatever we can set up that we can do.
I know that we've got that on the Knights of the Crusade page, but we're trying to find a better venue to distribute that stuff. So we will make that one of our priorities.
Okay, yeah, and so Babunsky there is saying that one from us and one from the community. So you'll have both. We can do that.
And that'll be on Discord?
Yeah, or through Google, Discord.
Okay.
Amalgam. We'll get it set up. I mean, we've had problems in the past trying to get that set up to make things easy.
And that's one of the Twitch/Discord thing seems to really, I mean, the way you kind of laid it out, Chuck laid it out for me, it seems to solve.
I think it'll solve most of those problems. And do we have any pre-gens on the website?
There should be. I know that when Mark was doing that, all the submissions went through Mark.
Yeah.
And I know that he did a lot of it, so we should have pre-gens. I assume. I haven't looked at it forever on a Sunday, so.
Well, we need that, and we need that set up. Ooh, someone else said something. I know we're getting off track and we're running out of time, but we did the cards for Adventures Back.
Yes.
Someone was mentioning
spell. I did read that email.
Did you read that?
I didn't go on to the Amazon to look at it. What we're going to do, and we've talked about this, we're going to do spell cards. I don't know when, soon, but we're going to do spell cards. But I'm not going to do them. We're doing them a little bit differently. I don't know what other companies are doing. We're going to make a book form with sleeves like magic cards. So when you're playing your wizard, these are your spells. We don't have to worry about. One of the things about spell cards and monster cards for me is organizational. Once you pull it out of the deck, you can't find it, gets lost, whatever. But with sleeves, you'll be able to slide these things in. So if you've got a 5th level magic user and he's got these spells memorized, you can put them in the sleeve of your book and you can go. So that is the plan. Spell cards are very much on my mind. I want to get those things done, hopefully this year.
Yeah.
We've kind of cleared the deck. Monster Treasures is done. Player's Guide to Aihrde 5th edition is done. These things are being printed. Harvesters, we're waiting for one file and it's done. The Unclean is done. So we're kind of looking to a new horizon at last.
Right, yeah, a little breathing room.
Yeah. Did we have another question?
I don't know if we're going to use your template or not, Epi. I haven't actually looked at it yet. I think Chuck might have it. You're doing one that's online. I know you asked me about it, and usually we always just say, yes, do it, and we'll see what happens. But that's going to be something we'd have to look at.
Eraser TX had a question. Was that where the name Troll Lord came from? The name Troll Lord actually also comes from the big game. When Trigol the Mage, Nulok, he takes the name Nulok later, when he begins to build armies to fight, in the early days when he was trying to summon Unklar, one of the campaign arcs was their players were trying to stop him from doing that. And Mac Golden played Aristobulus the White. He was the magic user kind of set up against Trigol. And to build armies against Aristobulus and Luther and those, he began to enlist trolls, and he was known after a while as the Troll Lord. So Trigol, Nulok, the Troll Lord are all the same things. So when we were formulating the company, Mac and I were just kind of rolling names, all kinds of names across, and I don't know if he suggested it or I suggested it or one of them, but Mac and I see eye to eye a whole lot. And we both just said, this is it, Troll Lord game, just coming a bit. So Troll Lord is directly, evolves directly out of the big game, which evolves directly out of the world of Aihrde, where it's all kind of rolled together. You almost can't separate all of this mess.
Yeah.
The game from the world, from all of it. Lots of fun.
Any more questions before I put the kibosh on this so I can get home before it rains?
Oh, that's right. You got storms rolling across you.
I was
Don't you?
about to come up for
Yeah, does anyone have any last questions? I think I've rambled on a bit. I hope I got some of it cleared up. And Aihrde's always been a hard thing to explain to people. We've never had this kind of venue, and this is the absolute perfect venue for it.
It is.
So.
And I think we ought to do more of it. We ought to dive into the separate sections, just run
that's
some
a good idea.
campaigns, and then have it set up so people can follow along.
So we're going to do more. I'd really kind of like to do 2 of these a week if possible. Just I'm talking about whatever, stuff like that.
All right. Well, I guess that might be it.
All right. Well, definitely spread the word about the Twitch channel and the Discord. Is that a channel? Is it called Discord channel?
It's a Discord server, I believe,
Okay.
and we have channels within that.
Okay, so Discord server, Twitch channel.
Yes.
Yes, okay. So spread the word, and we'd appreciate any kind of sub you want to throw our way. All of it. Thanks for showing up. This was a lot of fun.
Yeah, thank you guys, and we'll be around. And if you want that free of Gods and Monsters of Aihrde, email tim@trollord.com, and at some point this week I will figure out how I'm going to distribute it. It's probably small. It's under 20
it's small. It's 24 pages, half
if
page.
it's
so
under 25 megs, I can just email it to them.
Yeah, that'll be
All right, cool. We'll do that then.
and we'll work on the chair.
Yeah.
Twitchy, we'll get a chair fixed up. All right, thanks everybody.
Take
Have
care.
a great
Bye-bye.
week.